So I have had many people over the course of the last few months ask me to do a review of Omarchy. Now, if you're not familiar with Omarchy, basically what it is a flavored version of Arch Linux. You install Arch, whatever way you want to do that, and then you run a script which basically gives you Omarchy, which is a rice and a workflow kind of all in one. Has a whole bunch of applications associated with it. It has a Hyperland, I believe, rice associated with it, all this stuff, right? And people have found this to be a very interesting thing because it looks nice. It seems to be a very well thought out, very opinionated way of doing Arch Linux and Hyperland and all the things that go along with it. And if you've trolled the YouTube Linux ecosystem out there, you'll know that basically every Linux YouTuber has made a video about Omarchy, and even some non-Linux YouTubers have picked this thing up and used it, and a lot of them like it. Some people have not cared for how opinionated it is. Some people have enjoyed that aspect of it, but I haven't made a video until now, and I have no actual interest in doing a video, and I wanted to kind of talk about why. Because first off, I'm quite tired of those questions being asked of me, but also I think that this is one of the things that I'm starting to feel very strongly about, is that I am just done recommending other people's workflows to you, okay? I can't recommend my own workflow to you guys. That's my workflow. You have your own workflow. And basically what Omarchy is someone else's workflow on top of Arch Linux. They've done all of the work. They've created the key bindings and installed the applications and all this stuff. That's what you get by running the script. It's a development environment for the developer who wrote and did all of that configuration. It's not going to suit you. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't change it, of course. That's Linux. You can change it whatever you want. And maybe there's something for using that as a starting point towards your own ecosystem, your own workflow, if you will. Maybe that's something that you can do and something that you will do, but I can't recommend that to anybody anymore because I don't feel that way. For me personally, the best workflows are ones that you build yourself because they are tailored to the way you want to do things. If I were to go use someone else's workflow or their version of Linux in terms of their, apps and their key bindings and stuff, I would just drive myself mad. It'd be like going and borrowing someone else's keyboard. Leave it to Matt to make a keyboard metaphor, but it'd be like me going to Drew's house, buying his keyboard, and finding out he uses the Workman keyboard layout. I don't know Workman at all. Now, I doubt that Drew actually does that, but let's just say I would be absolutely lost. I'd have to learn how to do all that stuff. It would completely change the way I used my computer. It's the same thing where you go use an Omarchy or you use a install script to install Arch Linux or Gentoo or OpenSUSE or whatever it is. You are following someone else's workflow. Now, as I see you're talking about this, it makes me think, well, Matt, isn't that what all distros are? Is just a template that someone has built for other people in their own image. And that's somewhat true. So if you go and install Ubuntu, you're going to get Canonical's way of doing Linux, right? Their way of doing GNOME, their extensions and stuff like that. That's absolutely true. But there is a slight difference, I feel, between an actual distro like Ubuntu and something that builds on top of another distro. Now, I know that when you hear me say that, you're like, Matt, isn't Ubuntu based on Debian? Yes, that's true. But Ubuntu has done so much more work in terms of actually making their own distro that it is actually its own thing. Really, Ubuntu is as far away from Debian as Arch is away from Gentoo. Like, they're just not the same thing. Yeah, they use the same package manager. They still have some of the same repositories, but Ubuntu is its own thing. And we know that because, they have snaps in there and their own release cycle and all the stuff that goes along with being a distro. Whereas with something like Omarchy is just an install script for some config files. That's basically what it is, from my understanding. And that's different than what Ubuntu is. And basically, the way I always see this and the way that I'm talking about this is that it just feels like you're taking someone else's workflow and trying to make it your own. And that's okay as long as you're aware of that's what you're doing, but I can't recommend you do it. And that's the reason why I'm not interested in trying Omarchy. It just feels pointless to me. And I'm not saying Omarchy is pointless. I'm just saying me recommending it is pointless. If that workflow happens to suit you, go use it. If that workflow doesn't suit you, and it probably doesn't, make your own. Because one of the things that I've learned through using Linux for the last near 10 years. Now, I know for the people who have been around Linux for like 40 years now, it's not that long. But for me, 10 years is, I think I can start kind of boasting the fact that I've been around for about 10 years. For me, one of the things that I've learned is that I learn better by building my own stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I've started to do a little bit more development work and all this stuff. I feel better about the things that I use when I've built it myself. Now, that doesn't mean I don't use things built by other people. I still use OBS, and I still use Audacity, and I still use Vivaldi and all these things, right? We're all going to do that. But from a racing perspective, if we will, a workflow perspective, I want to build those things up myself. I want to have my key bindings, not someone else's. I want to have my bar and the modules in my bar the way that I want them, not someone else's. Now, I will still look lustfully at other people's races on Unix porn and then often emulate them because they're cool. But even then, so actually, just for an example, someone in my Discord server, I think his name is Cody, had an awesome Waybar setup. I took that because it looked awesome, and I remade it in my own image. I set it all up myself. It looked awesome, and while I emulated his Waybar, I made it myself, and I learned along the way what I needed to do and actually do that. I made it into my own thing, and now it's possible that, again, you could do that with Omarchy, but it just feels like if you're not, it feels a little elitist to say this kind of stuff. Like, you got to do it yourself. It kind of reminds me of those people who, if you have an opinion on someone's work, like as a non-developer, you go tell them, hey, it would be really cool if you have this feature. And the response is, well, if you don't like the way that I'm doing it, go code it yourself. That's basically what I'm saying here, but a little, toned down, I guess. It's just like, it feels to me that the workflow that you build is better if you build it yourself because it's yours, and it will work better for you than taking someone else's and molding it into. And just finally, the best example I have actually comes from ages ago. Now, I have no idea where Luke Smith actually is. I'm sure he's off in the woods somewhere. But he used to have this thing called LARBS, and at first it was i3. It was an install script for Arch Linux that installed Arch 3 along with all of his key bindings and applications. And then he moved to DWM and made that similar thing, but for DWM. And it was awesome. It was my first real attempt at DWM because you could just run this script and it would install everything that, all of his really cool stuff. I mean, he had an awesome workflow. It was all keyboard centric and all this kind of stuff, right? And the thing about LARBS was that it had a ton of his own personal key bindings inside of it, his workflow there. And in fact, I have sculpted a lot of my key bindings based on Luke Smith's key bindings, simply because that's was my first exposure to that kind of thing, right? And maybe if your first exposure to Omarchy is that way, maybe you will do the same. But what I'm trying to say here is that I feel like I was poorer off by using LARBS, not because LARBS is bad, but simply because I didn't immediately, jump in and learn how to do the things myself. Now, there is a counter argument to everything that I'm saying here, is that if you are brand new to this kind of thing and you want to use Omarchy as a learning tool, you want to go into it and, see how someone else has done things and, kind of learn by tweaking their stuff. I don't see anything wrong with it, and I don't see anything wrong with you using Omarchy. This video wasn't me trying to persuade people not to use it. This was me trying to explain why I'm not recommending you use it, just because I feel like building it from the ground up is better for most people. So this is the first video I've made since I've been back to making videos, and you might have noticed that it was even more rambly than normal. So I gotta get myself back out there and actually learn how to make videos again. So if you made it through the entire 10 minutes or so of this video, I appreciate that. I should just say that I appreciate that. So thank you so very much for that. If you want to follow me, you can do so on Mastodon. I'm back on Fosstodon, by the way. The link for the Mastodon instance that I'm on will always be in the video description. You can follow me there. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thelinuxcast. There you'll find a weekly exclusive podcast that I do for all my patrons. Basically, it's just me sitting in front of this microphone for about 15 minutes or so, just rambling on about nonsense. I'm back to doing that as well. I just posted a brand new episode of that yesterday, talking more about what's going on in my life and some of the things that I've been working on. So if you're interested in that, hit me up over on Patreon or hit the join button down there below, and you can get that on YouTube here as well. So thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Thank you so very much. Thank you guys for sticking with me through this crazy month where I haven't posted very much. So I do truly appreciate that for those of you who support me monetarily, and for those of you who are just watching along. I appreciate you sticking around and supporting me and subscribing and all that stuff. So I think that's where I will end it today, and I'm done rambling now. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.